Genesis chapter 27, I'm going to start reading in verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass, when Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau his eldest son, and said unto him, My son. And he said unto him, Behold, here am I. And he said, Behold, now I am old, I know not the day of my death. Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver and thy bow, and go out to the field, and take me some venison, and make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, that my soul may bless thee before I die. And Rebekah heard when Isaac spake to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison, and to bring it. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat, and bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I have commanded thee. Go now to the flock, and fetch me thence two goats. Oh man, I'm having a hard time reading. Let's try verse 9 again. I'm getting all sorts of tongue-tied. Go now to the flock, and fetch me thence 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me, and not a blessing. And his mother said unto him, Upon me be thy curse, my son, only obey my voice, and go fetch me them. And he went and fetched, and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory meat, such as his father loved. And we'll stop there for right now, and let's go ahead and have a word of prayer. Lord, I want to pray that you will use this evening that we have in your house. Lord, I pray that you will use me tonight. Lord, I pray that you will help me not to get in the way of your message, Lord. Help my inabilities or my frailties not to hinder your word tonight. I pray that you will speak through us, Lord, or speak through me, Lord. Help us to hear from you this evening. I pray this in your name. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. I know we read a fairly large portion to start, and realistically, I wanted to read a larger portion of this passage, but didn't want to spend way too much time with that. And I had a hard enough time getting through 14 verses. You didn't want me to read more, but we'll look at more of it as we go through the message. We've moved on through Abraham and kind of moved past Isaac, headed to the end of his life. And I know in that we skipped over some pretty major decisions that he made along the way. But as I've been looking at this series and studying, I've already said it's probably going to be at least all year, if not multiple year. And we can't go chapter to chapter through the Bible, or this would be a really long series. You start looking at it, there are choices that are made in every chapter of the Bible. And I did the math for you today. If we did a chapter by chapter of every choice in the Bible, there's 1,189 chapters in the Bible. We'd be on this series the next 24 years. And that's assuming we never have guest speakers and never stray away. So unless you want to be looking at you have a choice until the year 2045, we're going to jump ahead once in a while. So that's what we're doing this evening. So that being said, we're going to look at Jacob and a little bit at Esau, but I want to put the majority of the focus this evening on Jacob. Jacob is, to me, an interesting man in the Bible because he's a man that is used of God. He's a man that throughout the Bible God claims. 32 times in the Bible God refers to himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So 32 times God is recognizing Jacob for the fact that he served God. Jacob is a man who his line is a line that God's people came from. The promise that God gave to Abraham that he's going to be the father of a nation comes through Jacob. And really at Jacob is where I guess the nation started to kind of take off. So Jacob is used of God to be part of fulfilling God's promise. Jacob is the man who later on wrestled with God. I mean, there are a lot of major factors that Jacob played a role in throughout the Bible, and yet much of what we know about him, or I shouldn't say it that way, much of what what he is known for is not positive. Again, he's claimed by God as that line, but much of what he's remembered for is not positive. And today I want to take some time to look at some of those choices made by Jacob. The first that I want us to look at, Jacob chose deception. I'm not going to have us read it again. We just did a minute ago, verses 5 through 14. Rebekah hears Isaac talking to Esau and wants him to go and hunt for venison to bring it, and she calls Jacob in and tells him to go get a couple of the goats, and you're going to kill them, and this whole thing. And I want to start this off. Really, Rebekah is the one that starts this whole thing. It's Rebekah that tells Jacob what's going on. It's Rebekah that is listening in on the conversation between Isaac and Esau and calls for Jacob. It's Rebekah that comes up with the plan. She's the one who sends him to kill the goat, and she's the one who cooks up the meat. She's the one who instructs him to wear his brother's clothes so he'll smell like his brother, and the goat skins on him, to the point that Jacob even kind of objects when she tells him to do it. And I say kind of because his objections aren't, this is wrong. His objections are, I might get caught. So he kind of objects, and she tells him, do it anyways. Your curse will be on me, just do it. Rebekah is the one who's heading this entire thing up, and yet Jacob, it's Jacob who's known as the deceiver. So it's a strange scenario. If she's the one overseeing this entire process, why is he the one taking the fall? After all Jacob did was obey his mom. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? And I'm going to explain it very, very simply, and we'll get into what I'm wanting to focus. Put it this way, wrong is wrong no matter who instructs you to do it. We all understand right is right and wrong is wrong. And while his mom definitely put him in a hard position, Jacob made the choice to do wrong. He chose to deceive. I'm going to use a super over-exaggerated example to explain this. If your boss told you, I want you to go murder someone, would you do it? Of course not. But he's your authority. You're supposed to obey the authority over you. But we know wrong is wrong. In that instance, we all understand that wrong is wrong. The scenario with Jacob is no different. His mom may have dreamed up the plan, and his mom may have set it all in motion, but Jacob still chose to do wrong. And as I said, his objections to it, you read through there. I'm not going to take the time to have us read through there again right now, but you read through there, none of his objections are, Mom, this is sin. Mom, this is a lie. Mom, this is deceiving. It's this instead. Mom, Dad will know, and I'm going to get in trouble, and he's going to curse me. Never is his objection, this is sin against God, and I shouldn't do this. This is lying. This is deceiving. His objection is, I don't want to get caught. He chose to deceive. In him choosing that, he chose deception for profit. Remember, this isn't the first time that Jacob has done this. He did the same thing to Esau before. Turn back to Genesis chapter 25 with me real quick. I told you we're going to be looking at quite a bit. Genesis 25 verse 29. And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So this time we're looking at in Genesis 27 is not the first time that he's done this to his brother. Esau comes back from a long day, thinks he's about to die of starvation because he's a typical guy, and the moment your stomach starts to grumble, you think, I am near to death, I need to eat this very moment. So he comes in, and Jacob tells him, well, I'll feed you, I'll give you this food if you give your birthright. And Esau is so convinced he's on the edge of starvation that his response is, well, what good is a birthright if I'm dead? Sure, take it. And goes along with it. Both cases, in the case of the birthright and the case that we see in Genesis chapter 27, have a financial significance. Looking back at biblically and tradition, with the birthright and the blessing that Isaac was giving here, you received the family wealth. When the father died, he passed all that he had down to one son, usually the eldest, but all that the family had went to him. He's deceiving for wealth. He chose deception for power. The birthright and the blessing, both with it, had power. Along with just having the family money, you led the family. This deception that he chose was to gain himself position, if you will. As I was studying for this, I couldn't help but think how prevalent that is today. Deception for position. We see it in things like politics constantly. Anymore, I think that might be all that politics are. It seems to be very little about what they actually stand for or what they are actually going to do, but a bunch of deception for power. You think about politicians through the years, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on, you look at politicians through the years, how many promises they make while running their campaigns about all they're going to do, and yet they do very little of them. It's deception for power. We see it in business. I hate it. I'm very much the kind of guy, if I shake on something, I consider that a contract. If I've given my word, I'm going to follow through, but that isn't the case. It's very true in business that if it isn't on paper, it didn't happen, because people have no problem saying whatever they need to get their way, choosing deception for profit. But before we get too quick to only look at someone else, we're often guilty of it too. Choosing deception to get what we want. Choosing deception maybe to keep us from getting in trouble, what we want. And I just want to point this out. Choosing deception always leads to problems. We're going to see this a little bit more as we get into the message. For Jacob, it led to a disappointed father, an angry brother, and years separated from his family because he chose to lie for personal gain. Caused him problems. Jacob chose deception. Second thing I want us to see, Jacob chose to run. Look at chapter 7, verse 41 through 45 with me. It says, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand, then will I slay my brother Jacob. And these words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob her younger son, and said unto him, behold, thy brother Esau is, as touching thee, doth comfort himself, purposing to kill thee. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, and arise, flee thou to Laban my brother in Haran, and tarry with him a few days until thy brother's fury turn away. And it goes on from there. We'll go ahead and stop there for right now. This is where I mentioned in the introduction, I'm going to mention Esau and his choice for a moment, and then we'll get back on track here. In all this, Esau chose hatred. And I want to be careful how I say this, but I think if we're totally honest in this room, we can all understand why. I think most of us would probably even give Esau a pass in that. Twice now, Jacob has lied to him. Twice now, Jacob has tricked him, and at this point has cheated Esau out of everything he has. everything he's looking forward to for his future. These are both things, the birthright and the blessing that automatically should have been given to Esau. It isn't a matter of Isaac is picking who he would rather have them. This is pretty set in stone. This belonged to Esau, and now they've both been taken from him, and he has nothing. So I think we can understand him being upset. If someone steals from you repeatedly, you're going to be upset. I was trying to think of ways that we could comprehend the feelings that Esau had here. I mean, you think about it. Someone breaks in your house and steals from you. That's going to upset you. You come home and someone's broken in and taken your stuff. That's going to upset you, or at least it would me. But then imagine you go to work the next day, come back, and that same person has come back in again and cleaned out everything they didn't get the first time. Now, let's be honest, our carnal side, I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be upset. That's what's happening with Esau. He has been wronged repeatedly and has lost everything, and he's angry. The Bible tells us he hated his brother so much so that he was planning his brother's death, just waiting until the time of grieving for his dad was past. Now, I know that our focus isn't Esau or what he did, but I think it's definitely worth taking the time to look at that just as wrong as Jacob was for lying and deceiving and cheating his brother, Esau was wrong for his anger and hatred. Because it doesn't matter what a person's done to you, hating them is never the answer. Hatred hurts you more than it hurts the person you hate. I think I said that right. Hatred hurts you more than it hurts the person you hate, because it eats you up. And normally the person you hate doesn't even know you hate them. It bothers you a whole lot more than it does them. We've all heard the phrase, it's not new, that two wrongs don't make a right. Well, that applies here. It doesn't matter that he's wronged. His response wasn't right. Now, praise the Lord, we know this passage well enough. We know that later his response has changed, but that initial response is anger and hatred. But for this point, I want us to focus on what Jacob did here. He's chosen to deceive, he's chosen to lie, and now, not surprisingly, his brother isn't happy about it, so Jacob's response, run. Again, led by his mother's advice, but Jacob's response is run. I want to point a couple of things out about running from your problems specifically. Running from your problems never fixes anything. Ever. The problem here was lying and deceit and cheating and anger. None of that gets fixed by running away. We tend to get that idea that somehow if I can get away from my problem, it'll get better. That never works. That never works. You can't find an example in the Bible of someone running from a sin problem and it all just got magically better. It just doesn't work. Running from a problem only causes you to be miserable, because you can try to run from your problems and you can try to ignore that they exist, but you always know they're still there. You always know they're still festering. Jacob ran, and he was distracted by the fact that he was working for Laban, and he was distracted by the fact that he was working for his wife, and then all the mess that happened with that, him being deceived, but inside he still knew that this mess was still there. And I know that because it's evidenced by the fact that when he headed home and hearing of his brother coming to meet him, he was afraid. He knew this problem's still there. The entire time he had run, he knew there was still a problem. Running from your problems doesn't make them go away. Running from your problems, it just delays the inevitable. Eventually, it has to be dealt with. Jacob runs into problems in his new home with Laban and all of that, and I'm not going to take the time to go into all of what happened there, but eventually he leaves there, heads back home, but now has to face what he's avoided this whole time. It didn't fix the problem. Time didn't make it go away. He eventually had to go back and face up to what he had done, which is always the case. It's always the case. When we run from or ignore our problems, it never fixes it. It never makes it go away. We always have to go back and face it. Some people have that mindset that if I just pretend everything is okay, if I just ignore that there is a problem, maybe it'll be all right. But all it does is delays the inevitable. That's what Jacob learned. Jacob chose deception. Jacob chose to run. The third choice that I want us to see this evening is kind of where things turn around a little bit. Jacob chose to return. Look at Genesis chapter 33 with me real quick. Genesis 33, starting in verse 1. Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children unto Leah and unto Rachel and unto the two handmaids, and he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. And he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. And Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Now, I skipped through a lot of the coming back. As he's coming back, he hears of Esau, and as a guy, I have an awfully hard time with what Jacob does, because he sends his wives and kids ahead of him to see his brother first. You know, if he's angry, maybe if I give him servants first, and maybe if I give him animals, I can appease him before he gets to me, or maybe he'll, see what Esau does to them and turn and run again. I don't know what was going through his mind. It sure wasn't, it sure wasn't chivalry going through his mind. Well, at least put it that way. He was not being a manly man of, I'm going to just go face my brother. But finally got through all of that. He and Esau are back. Jacob has done wrong. He's wronged his brother. He's run from the problem. But I think what's wonderful to see, and the reason I want us to point this out, and I want us to see this, is that isn't where it ended. He did wrong. He wronged his brother. He ran from a problem, but that isn't where it ended. And I think it's important because for a lot of people it is. A lot of times that's what we do. We wrong someone and run away from the problem and then spend the rest of your life trying to run from and hide from problems. I think I'm just going to be blunt with this. That's no way to live. It's no way to live, constantly looking over your shoulder and trying to, avoid that person. Jacob spent years running before he finally got things right. But he finally got things right. He didn't stay there. He didn't just continue to live the rest of his life. I've wronged my brother and he's angry and wants to kill me, so I'm just going to cut that part of my life out and try and avoid it forever. He went back. He chose to return. He chose to make it right. Here's where I want to bring this message tonight and kind of wrap this all together. Jacob, he chose to deceive, and he paid a price for it. Jacob chose to run and lost years with his loved ones. I think about it, because of him running, wasn't there when his dad passed away. Because he chose to run. But Jacob chose to return. He had made some mistakes. He had hurt some people, but he chose to make it right. That's where I want to bring this evening. Make the right choice. Choose truth, even when it means you won't get what you want. If you have to deceive to get what you want, you have no business having it. Choose truth. Choose to face your problems rather than run from them. we all have problems that we don't want to deal with. I think that's just a fact of life. Every one of us has problems that we don't want to have to deal with, that we don't want to have to face. Choose to face it with God's help rather than run. And choose to fix it. You hurt someone in the past or ran from a problem, make it right. Stop living, running, or hiding from your problems. Make it right. I think another choice that isn't in Jacob, but is seen in Esau could be made as well. Esau, who hated his brother for what he had done. By the time Jacob comes back, Esau realized his wrong too. Changed his attitude, his outlook. He had been wronged, but he no longer hated. It's a choice. I was thinking about it as I was studying for this and preparing for tonight. Pastor over the last few years has spent a significant amount of time preaching on unity. He spent time praying for unity. He's mentioned it in multiple messages. Unity doesn't happen if we run from and ignore our problems. Unity isn't sweeping our problems under the rugs and trying to ignore that they exist. Unity isn't getting upset or making someone upset and running away. Unity happens when we choose to make things right. It doesn't happen by ignoring that there's differences. It happens by making them right. So here's the real conclusion. I kind of started concluding earlier. Here's the real conclusion. Choose truth, choose to stay, and choose to make it right. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you will help us to be able to learn from this, Lord. I think, to me, it is such a blessing to see that though Jacob made some poor decisions early on, the choices to lie to his brother to get personal gain, and the choices of deception, the choice of running from his problems, and yet that isn't where it ended. He chose to return, to make it right. Lord, I pray that you'll help us to be able to see this and to be able to learn from it this evening. As I said, to choose truth, to choose to stay, and to choose to make it right. Lord, I know it's been a burden of yours and of mine to see unity, and that happens with these three things. That happens if we'll choose to be honest, to stay and not run from our problems, and if we'll choose to make things right. Not to ignore that there's differences,